Hello, and thank you to our reviewers for taking time out to give us some feedback. This is the Eames house designed by Charles Eames. The Eames house was a part of Art and Architecture's Case Study House program beginning at the end of World War II. The concepts of the Eames house I chose to focus on in this project were design as rearranging a kit of parts and creating architecture unselfconsciously. The Eames house was meant to be an example of housing that could be mass-produced cheaply and efficiently by using parts that were available in manufacturers' catalogs. To Eames, architecture was meant to be unself-conscious. It was not a statement by the architect, but rather an environment to allow the user to define their own space. In that way, architecture was an exhibition of the user's life. In the Eames's case, they viewed their own home very much as a shock absorber for their lives. In my small-scale model, the major concept I was focused on was architecture as an exhibition of life. I wanted the vibrancy of the things that were alive to be the dominant focus of this design, and I wanted the other elements to serve supporting roles to that. I wanted the glass to serve as that imagery of a display case meant to illustrate that concept of an exhibition. The styrofoam concrete was meant to represent the role of shock absorber that the Eames house played for them in their own lives. These elements I carried on to the large-scale model. A significant concept from the Eames house that this first design lacked was a consistent and clear implementation of a mass-produced kit of parts. That was very important to the Eames house, and I wanted to address that more effectively in my large-scale model. In my large-scale model, all of the materials I used were mass-produced elements, with the exception of the plant life. The wood was designed to be wood flooring with a tongue-and-groove connection meant to be easy to assemble. The metal was from springs from spiral notebooks. The glass was from a plastic display window of a box, and the element representing concrete at the bottom is raised coin garage tile. Though the garage tile is not formable like concrete, it performs the same role of a shock absorber, as I wished the more massive form of concrete to do in my original design. The plant in the center is the only unique material in the design, which is how the lives of the Eameses were meant to be in their home. The structure was meant to fade away, leaving their lives as the focal point. They also blurred the distinction between their inside and outside spaces, which I tried to communicate by having the structure surrounding the plant incompletely. I struggled in the beginning of the process of designing this final model to decide which materials I felt properly suited this purpose. I found the design formed much more clearly once I decided to only use materials that are mass-produced and can be arranged in several different ways, which is the spirit of what Eames was trying to do in the original Eames house. The wood, glass, and metal materials were a little more obvious to me after that point, as it's a literal interpretation of a mass-produced element of that material. The concrete I had to interpret a little more abstractly than the others. I associated the concrete with the idea of a shock absorber because it is massive and can take a lot of stress before failure. The garage tile doesn't have that same massive quality as concrete does, but it does act as a shock absorber. So for the sake of this model, I felt it was an appropriate analogy for concrete, even though it doesn't have all of those same qualities. It had the quality I was using it for symbolically. Eames saw design as rearranging elements out of a set of given parts, so while this project was altered from its original form due to our unusual circumstances, it is actually quite fitting to represent the Eames house in this way. Limiting my palette to just the materials I already had forced me to work and design within a module like he did with both designs of the Eames house, which gave me a greater appreciation of how his materials defined and changed his design. Thank you for listening.